Hi, everyone. Hello, and thanks for being here with this conversation with stewardship professionals regarding church fundraising in a new normal. My name is David Rocchio, and I am the Director of Stewardship at the Cathedral of St. Philip in Atlanta, Georgia. I will be moderating our discussion along with three wonderful stewardship professionals today. Chris Coons, a consultant with CCS Fundraising, Caroline Marock, Stewardship Manager at St. Michael and All Angels in Dallas, Texas, and Kate Kyle, Director of Stewardship and Finance at St. John's Episcopal Church in Tallahassee, Florida. Before we get started, a few housekeeping notes. One is we're sorry we got off to a little bit of a late start here, but hopefully things will improve from this point forward. Each of our co-moderators will speak for a few minutes, and we will then move to questions and opinions, Q&O. We are expecting a lot of participants on this call today, and folks are currently muted. If you have a question, please use the chat feature. Also, please use the chat feature for any topic that you might want addressed in a future webinar. With that being said, I'll turn to Chris with CCS Fundraising to give some perspective on the historical context and recommended best practices.
Thanks, David. First and foremost, in times of need and crisis, parishes serve a vital leadership role in the health and welfare of the communities that you serve. So thank you for being on the front line of that work. And thank you also to David and Joe for inviting CCS to join you in this essential meeting. CCS has over 70 years experience. And in those many decades, we have partnered with our clients to respond in times of war, natural disasters, terrorist attacks, and economic slumps. Right now, we are focused on what is in front of us, the immediate implications. One of our partners at CCS said yesterday, fundraising is a full contact sport, and we just shut down the best play in our book. CCS is focused on staying in touch while minimizing our physical interactions. Should this become a prolonged economic slump, we absolutely will share additional guidelines and address this as a firm in the future. But we can share from our experience that markets always recover. So, drawing on our past experiences for how nonprofits overcome difficult and challenging times, we focus on four major themes. First, continuous communication and constant engagement with your parishioners. Second, ensuring prudent and thoughtful adjustments to short-term fundraising activities. Third, strong and decisive leadership. And fourth, stay the course. You must be committed to continuing your fundraising goals and plans. Some specific actions we recommend to our clients are the following. Your parishioners want to know how you are responding to this crisis and how this is affecting you. So develop one or two key messages about the impact this crisis is having on your parish and what you are doing to respond. Answer questions like, what are you doing about your services and regular programming? And how are you taking care of your employees in your facilities? You should develop a communications plan that focuses on the next several weeks, featuring an outreach initiative of personal calls and personal emails to core donors and friends. And consider special fundraising initiatives that appeal towards funding immediate relief and any special initiatives directly related to your crisis response. Most importantly, your parishioners want to know you are concerned and thinking about them. Personal outreach at this time can have significant implications and in very meaningful and positive ways. I know many of our clients are focused this week on just calling people to say, how are you doing? And do you need anything? We must continue to motivate our communities. The involvement of your rector, your assisting priests, your stewardship committee, your vestries, and all volunteers is essential at this moment. By taking this approach, you will strengthen and submit your relationship with your parishioners. It'll also be an important opportunity to affirm your mission and demonstrate your relevance, because at the end of the day, your mission has not changed. Staying connected in meaningful ways will also have lasting emotional and spiritual relevance, particularly since your parishioners are looking to you for calm and solace. And finally, we learned the hard way that specifically after the financial crisis in 2008, that 2/3 of donors who stopped giving to an organization did so because they no longer felt connected. It might feel like now is the time to pause or disengage and lay low, but those that continue to push forward appropriately and empathetically will succeed, and those that step back will lose ground. CCS does have a core recommendation document that we will circulate to this group after this call through the CEAP network. And our colleagues on the call at this point will share some specific examples of how they're responding. And we look forward to continuing to be part of this evolving conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Before you go real quick, or I know you're going to stay, but can you go over your 4 points real quickly? There were a couple folks that asked for you just to repeat those quick 4 points you gave at the beginning.
Absolutely. First, continuous communication and constant engagement with your parishioners. 2, ensuring prudent and thoughtful adjustments to your short-term fundraising activities. Short-term is the key there. 3rd, strong and decisive leadership. And 4th, stay the course. You must be committed to continuing your fundraising goals and plans.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
We're going to switch now to Caroline at St. Michael's and All Angels down in Dallas. She'll discuss communication strategies and volunteer engagement.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Caroline, and as David said, and we've said it twice already, I'm from Dallas, Texas. So I'm all about, like, how do we stay engaged and how do we communicate and how do we not lose that momentum with our committee, who are volunteers and who are so dedicated to helping us, to our pledging members. And to me, it's really easy. And this is all about our time to build relationships and reach out and make that touch, be it virtual or on the phone or have a committee meeting, keep the ball rolling, because it keeps everyone engaged and plugged in and the momentum going forward. You know, the simple as Kristen had mentioned, just doing a call and saying, how are you? What's going on? How are you feeling? Is there any way that we, your church, can be here for you? Right now will go so much farther in the long run for our organization. And so that is definitely something to truly remember. If you have an engaged group of committee members, stay in touch with them, kind of touch base with them on why you're all here to do this work, how important they are, and schedule calls with your stewardship committee leaders, and then put together a virtual meeting. If you all can't be together in person, obviously we all can't be together in person, but you know, do a conference call or a Zoom call or something, and continue as business as normal until you all agree together that you need to make some adjustments. But just keep everyone engaged, everyone is part of the process, and moving forward. And then one of the last things that I really stress for you all to really consider doing is talking about, this can be via email, via Facebook, via whatever the outlet of communication is for you, to talk about the different meanings of what generosity is. You know, we are dollars and cents driven. That's what we are here for. That's our function. But it's really right now the generosity of our kindness to each other, the generosity of knowledge of what's a current stat, what's a new refreshing hobby, you know, generosity of patience with ourselves and with the world as we possibly climb the walls of our homes, you know, and just keeping that in mind, because it will all just go into the generosity that we will look for when we make the ask. And when we do reiterate it to our community that, yes, we still have financial obligations to meet, and it's because of your generosity that we're able to do so, but it's very much at appropriate times. So I think that's really what I have to bring to that. As far as what the communication vehicles look like for you, that's really customary to your parish and your community. What works for your people and what will hit your people most, or what's the combination of things that will work best? Is it mail? Is it online? Is it telephone. It's a combination of all those things. So keep all of those things in perspective.
Thank you so much, Caroline. I'll now pass the mic over to Kate Kyle, who will be speaking on tools to engage donors and ways to demonstrate impact in a changing model.
Thank you so much, David, and thanks to Kristen and Caroline. Those are great comments, and we're seeing a lot of that here at St. John's. Communication is first and foremost, and you're absolutely right, both of you, that reaching out and connecting with our people is at the top of our mind right now. And we are in real time migrating from worshiping together, meeting together, Bible studies together, to a virtual platform, it's bumpy and we're all trying to figure out these Zoom calls, but they're really effective. So in our initial communications, we didn't lead. It wasn't about money and giving right away. That was really sort of down at the very bottom of a more checking in. How are you doing? Our pastoral care teams are out making phone calls and reaching out to our vulnerable folks medically and our folks over 65. So that is first and foremost the most important thing that we need to do. But we all know that we have to keep the giving going and regular. So I really like to think of it as we're really trying to help people learn some new habits. Things are just going to be different. We're going to be worshiping differently through streaming services and virtual meetings and Bible studies. And so I have the second communication that's going out this week will be more of the nuts and bolts of, okay, the plate's not going to pass you in the pew. So what are some other ways that you can give? And so we have four main ways for people to give differently in this new climate. First and foremost, I hope most churches have some sort of online giving through your website, whether you have another third-party vendor like a PushPay or a Tithely. We use ACS here, so we're tied in with Banco. But I hope that most all churches have some form of an online platform for giving. So direct folks to that first and foremost, where folks can make a one-time gift or they can set up reoccurring gifts, which is really the bread and butter, keeps the dollars flowing. The second one would be text giving. So we have that capability here, and it's not really widely used yet, but it's very simple, it's very effective. So as a staff, we're working on a quick little video tutorial of how to do that, to show people how easy it is to make a gift through text. A third way would be to encourage parishioners to use their own online banking. So whether they bank at Capital City across the street here or SunTrust Bank or whatever their banks may be, to go ahead and set up your church as a vendor to set up those recurring gifts or one time or quarterly or whatever their frequency preference is. And then there's the good old-fashioned mail that's still running as far as we know. So we haven't heard to the contrary. So if they like to write checks, they're not 100% comfortable with online giving yet, they can simply drop that check in the mail. And so that's the 1, 2, 3, 4 online text through their own banks or through the mail. And you're really just helping people learn maybe a different habit, but a habit they know well, a muscle they know well of giving. So as we go to streaming, we'll have a little time in there where we'll talk about this is the time where you can give in one of these ways. And in terms of impact, I think when you're doing the communications, the frequent communications, and probably most of us are going to see an uptick of weekly or by a couple times a week and a Sunday communication. So I think we're going to be communicating more, and I think we need to. I think our people need to hear from us. I think the world is scary right now. A lot of people are really anxious. Kids and teenagers are really anxious. Parents are going to be climbing the walls, like Caroline said, in short order. So they're going to really be tuning in to us. And so caring for God's people, loving God's people, and then exercising that generosity is first and foremost. And I think, too, as church communities, we have to be careful and remember that we want to model the generosity that we want to see. And so we need to be tuned in to what's happening in our own communities. I know it's kind of crazy right now with schools closing and food distribution, and it's gonna hit the fan really soon. So staying in tune and helping our volunteers connect. But that's what we're doing here. Just keep communicating.
Excellent. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kate. I will begin riffing through some of these questions that folks have presented. Please, again, use that chat feature down at the bottom of the toolbar on your Zoom meeting mailbox there, and we will start with one. Let's see. Peter Johnson asked, what ways of communications are better than email for developing engagement? Caroline, do you want to talk to that?
Sure. Peter, I think that, again, you need to look at how you're already communicating and what is successful for the majority of your parish. If it is a platform like Facebook, or if it's a platform like outside of email, it's the mail. It's just really whatever works best for you and in your community. But as far as platforms, I think that would be it. Or if it's text, a lot of people have the ability to send out mass texts and messages that way. So I think you just need to assess where you see the most success.
And Caroline, if I can add to that, I think that, church is about building relationships and building community and getting those relationships to care for each other in that community. To the extent that we can leverage our small groups, our affinity groups, our guilds to call each other, to lift each other up, to care for each other in this time, I think that is a great engagement tool, whether it's through phone calls or emails or text messages. But having that parishioner to parishioner contact, I think is essential in these times, and shows that we are building community, even if we're not at church on a Sunday morning.
David, I'm so glad that you said that, because, in our fundraising, we look to diversify the way that we get the message out, and we make the ask, and we reach different groups of people. It's the same way. And so thank you for saying that, because in one of our conversations, I was thinking of an organization that we've got within the church that does exactly that. And so thank you for bringing that to light.
Absolutely. Chris, when you say to stay with fundraising goals, do you mean to refer to their pledge commitment, even if they've lost their jobs? This seems insensitive. That's from Suzanne Hall.
Thank you for that question. When we say stay with your fundraising plans, that means don't cancel everything right now. You absolutely have to take this case by case. Just like you wouldn't send a letter to someone who just lost their child or their parents, you're not going to send a letter asking for money from someone that just lost their job. So first and foremost, again, starting with that direct connection, calling people to figure out where they're at, what's going on in their lives. That empathetic first step is where all fundraisers must start right now with their organizations.
And again, I think it gets back to that being in relationship. If you're in relationship, you're going to know folks that have lost their jobs. You're going to know folks that actually might be doing a little bit better in this economy than worse. If it's hard to imagine that, but it could be true. So being in relationship actually helps us answer a lot of those questions, be in the right spot for those questions. This is from Evan Garner. Our parish typically collects a special offering at Christmas and Easter, which is devoted to outreach, in a season in which regular offerings are not being collected each week. How do we approach a special offering? Kate, do you mind answering that?
Sure. Yeah, we were actually just talking about this yesterday on a task force call. So we would like to start a fund here for the financial needs of people in our community, which we can't even begin to imagine what those might be, but we know they're coming. We don't want to replace our regular offering, but we would like to do it in addition to. So we're envisioning setting up a special fund where we might encourage some, $5, $10, $15, $20 gifts to start getting that fund going. And then as the needs come in and as we're able to help and partner with other organizations, tell that story. I think that's really important, that you're always showing that impact through your communications. And some of the things we do are in our bulletin. I have a little section in the bulletin where I have kind of muscled my way in to keep talking about the finances and stewardship of the church. It's not something we do once a year. It's something we do all the time. And so we're always talking about money. So I think it's right and good to do any type of special offering. And your church may have a very strong connection with another organization in your community, like Second Harvest was our food pantry here, or you might have the homeless center, or whatever it is, collecting for that organization and getting the word out that the needs, I think everyone's going to understand how great the needs are in short order.
Very good. Thank you, Kate. Also, from Peter Johnson, if pledges start to slip, what to do? Contact individuals, broadcast the situation to the parish. I'll say a couple things about that and then turn it over to one of my colleagues if they want to say something about that. I would suspect that you're going to see pledges slip in the next few weeks. People are not going to be in the pews. People are going to be very anxious and nervous about what is to come, and they may feel like they need to save their money. Some other parishioners might feel they need to give more of it away, and that would be great too. My urging at this point would be to take it a day, a week at a time. Don't get overly anxious right now about what might be a month or 2 or 3 or 4 months away. Just do the best planning that you can do right now. I think the best planning you can do right now is, again, to stay in relationships. Call your donors. I'm trying to call 20 to 30 donors a day right now just to stay in relationship. I'm asking other parishioners to call parishioners to stay in relationship. If they know that we are energized and vital and healthy and working to care for them, they're going to be more responsive to us when we have to go and ask for their pledge or for a special donation or whatever it might be. So again, I go back to stay in relationship and take it one day, 1 week at a time. Don't go too far out if you don't have to. Anybody else want to add something to that?
I'm happy to. I would say this is just one of those things where we're just going to kind of have to take it as it goes and as it comes and goes, hopefully. I completely 100% back everything that David said, but I do agree. It's kind of a case-by-case basis as time goes on, and you might need to just make some adjustments. But always put yourself in the donor's shoes of how you want to be communicated with, and how it should be, if it should be communicated, and or when it needs to be communicated as a whole. Hopefully you won't get there all that much, but I think right now doing exactly what David said is the place to start to ensure the most minimal amount of that happening.
Excellent. Kate, can you go a little bit more in depth on electronic giving? People have some questions about Venmo, PayPal, Secure Give. Can you just text to give? Can you just give a brief kind of session on that and what's available, what kind of recommended, what's maybe not recommended right now?
Well, I'm in by no means an expert on all the different platforms and software. I know that there are several out there that you can choose. So I would just start with whatever you're using currently. It's probably not a good time to switch right this hot second. If you have people who are comfortable and know how to do that, you might want to just kind of ride it out for a little while. But if you haven't made those steps, now is a great time to get in that arena. Because this is how younger people are giving. This is the future. Lots of people under 30 don't even know what a checkbook is. So currently here at St. John, we use ACS as our database. And so all of our giving is linked through Venco. And so we've had great success with getting people into that platform and giving monthly. The text giving is through Venco, but there are other platforms out there that if we have a way to connect through Seep, maybe that people can share. If someone's kind of farther along with using PushPay, they might be able to speak to that. I can't personally because we don't use it. I don't know it that well. I know the kids are all using Venmo. My kids have trained me now to just keep sending them money through Venmo. And so that's one that people use. PayPal is out there. Tidely is out there. So whatever you have, I would say get really good at what you have. And if you don't, then pick one quick and get in the arena. And text giving is really just giving through text message, right? So for Banco, all it is a matter of sending, there's a special number, and then you send a keyword. And in our case, it's St. John's. If you all want to give to St. John's, you can. And so you just type that keyword in, and then it prompts you through your phone to a link where you can set up a credit card or a checking account. And once you set it up once, you're good to go. You can very quickly give small amounts, large amounts, any amount of money through a smartphone.
Excellent. Catherine asks, what role do you see lay leaders, especially vestry members, serving in these plans? Chris or Caroline?
Yeah, I'll take a first round at this. So with vestry, I would say particularly in this week and the next few weeks, engaging them and helping with some calls. The more people that are really sort of on the ground working alongside you in partnership with you to reach people, the better, especially if it's these elected leaders that are there to represent. So I think initially it's really just engaging them in these first round of personal outreach, so you can reach as many people as you possibly can.
It's exactly what Kristen said. Yeah. Absolutely.
I would add that we want to keep our vestry and or chapter members informed, and we want to encourage them to be kind of the non-anxious presence that we all kind of need. Again, a lot of what we're saying needs to kind of filter up and down in terms of kind of being in relationship, taking it a week at a time, being present, and just letting things kind of work out, not worrying about other, next week's problems today, but really just trying to be present and where we are today.
Yeah, I would just add too, we have sort of been leaning on our vestry and lay leaders who have expertise in particular areas. Medical doctors, we're relying on them. We have some communications experts, so we're bringing them in. We have some people with AV, they're just a whiz with a camera and filming. And so musicians, we're trying to just build a lot of content, things that we can share through social media and other platforms as a way to just be that loving presence and putting things out into the universe that will help people. So we can't do all that. There are not enough of us on staff, so we need our leaders. So I would say look to the people all around you who have these gifts and ask them, invite them in, and harness it.
We have a question about launching a capital campaign. Our diocese has begun to plan for a major capital campaign. Would you recommend that we put those plans on hold until this crisis has passed? Well, we have a stewardship consultant on this call. Chris, what would your recommendation be at this point?
Yeah, so I think really from CCS's point of view, what we're advising our clients is really stay the course with an empathetic, sympathetic approach. For a capital campaign, there is a ramp-up period. So there's a period of planning, getting buy-in from people. So they naturally take a little bit of time to get going. Now might be a good time to start that initial groundwork. It really depends on where you're at in that process. But I would, as the first storm of this first week sort of passes, dig right back in and find the best route forward and have a succinct timetable for that.
Thank you. Okay, let me see if I can go through here. Some churches depend not only on pledge income, but also rents and or tuition for preschool or private schools. What are recommendations about communicating about more complex financial situations? Also, do you expand your fundraising to, for example, the parents of a preschool partner? I'll say something to that. I mean, and others can add as well. I think that this is to be determined. We're probably one of the ways that certainly we think of ourselves at the cathedral is that we might be having to help out some of our parochial organizations. They may not have, we have a thrift house that relies on being open and people coming in and buying stuff each day. They've now been closed for almost a week, and that will begin to impact their top line and certainly their ability to meet their bottom line. So I think these are things that we need to be aware of and sensitive to, kind of have an understanding of the timing of when those issues might come up. When a rent payment might be due, for instance, or maybe a larger contractor payment or something like that, and to begin planning for them. I don't know that you have to have a solution immediately, but it's certainly something that you and your vestry, your leadership team need to be considering. And in regard to that, I think, I think everybody that you have a relationship with is a possible helper, benefactor, supporter. Again, I think the more that you're talking to folks, the better idea you're going to have of their interest and of their capacity. And so kind of staying in relationship, as somebody pointed out, making sure that people are acknowledged and thanked for the support they've already given. It's a crucial thing to be doing right now. We have to be thanking folks. We have to be saying, you are contributing to our impact. And our impact hasn't stopped just because our doors might be closed. We're still doing Zoom Bible studies. We're still having Sunday school classes. We're still having afternoon meditations. We may not be doing them in the church, but we are still having an impact, and we want to keep sharing that with folks and acknowledging their part and participation in that. Can anybody else add anything to that? Okay.
We don't have a school here at St. John's, but we do have a cafe that's temporarily closed. We were actually planning to be closed because we're in the winding down phase of a 5-year capital campaign. The construction is kind of wrapping up, so our construction is still continuing, which is so good news. So we're able to share some. We're trying to plant the seeds of hope of what, when people come back, when this ends and people are back in, like, we're showing pictures of the space, the cafe being repainted, and new classrooms being refurbished. So people are excited about that, but it is tricky when you have other types of revenue that you count on that are not there. So I think what David said is absolutely true. Getting your key leaders in finance and vestry together to, be as generous and forgiving as you can be if you have people renting from you or what have you, because everyone's going to be in a difficult boat.
Thank you. What are your recommendations for dioceses who are already currently launching their own annual appeal with teasers and plan to send out the actual request letters to donors? So i.e. things are already in the mail. This was kind of, they've already been planning. Things are already launched or sent. How do we communicate? And that might be from a third party, might be from the diocese sent to your parish parishioners. How do we deal with that as parishes and churches?
I'll start with this. You might consider, if it looks like you might have a couple of pieces that are in play, and perhaps the request letter itself has not yet been sent out. If the request letter hasn't been sent out, you may consider still sending it, but absolutely modifying your language in that letter to address, first and foremost, this is happening. This is what we're doing, and this is how you can help. I think people really want to know how they can help us in this difficult time for everyone. So if you have an opportunity to modify your appeal letter a little bit before it goes, we would absolutely recommend finding the opportunity to do that.
Okay. I'm trying to find the questions here. Hold on one second, excuse me. I work at a church with a large congregation. We are doing our best to keep up with parishioners, but by reaching out, back to keeping up with pledges. Are there insensitive ways to communicate for a larger church? Thank you, Ashley. I feel like that's kind of a softball. There are absolutely ways to be insensitive. to communicate with a large church, a small church, a medium-sized church. I think one of the first ways is to be insensitive, is to not recognize what's going on, to not be aware there's a pandemic in the United States. Most of our church doors are closed, and things are different. To not acknowledge that is I think quite insensitive. I think we want to be sensitive to where folks are, that we are really interested in them as individuals, not just as a cash machine, and that we want to be in relationship with them. I think the more that we can do to model that behavior, the more sensitive we will be to those parishioners and to our parish and to our community at large. Anybody else want to weigh in on how to be more sensitive with donors, how to not be insensitive?
I actually am just going to pick up on a word that's been repeated a lot in this conversation, and that's relationship. We are in the people business, and we have to start with people first. And with that, it leads into everything that David has said, that Chris has said, that Kate has said, that I have mentioned, and then we all know. And I think we are naturally going to, making our budget, balancing our budget, getting the budget to work. But first and foremost, we're a church, and we're their church, we're the people's church. And so with that, that's really where we have to start, because we're relationship people. That's just a very broad statement, but something that I think is very important for everyone to take note of, that we are truly in the relationship business. And so right now, I think that's what people need the most, especially as everyone is isolated, either in their homes or their offices, wherever they may be around, but they may not be having a whole lot of interaction. So, we have to start there before we can come in, like we've said earlier, I think with the ask of our continued financial commitments. But I just wanted to contribute that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, Ken Allen asks, what about engaging past leaders as potential message carriers and outreach help?
Absolutely. Anybody, this is where you got to organize your troops and you send them out. And I don't think it really matters if someone is called 2 or 3 times. That's 2 or 3 touches that they maybe would have never have gotten. So just as far as, decide what your messaging is, but if you want, the official message that is carried by a certain group of people, then it just trickles from there. Then another level of messaging can be carried by another group. But as far as just getting out there and calling folks to see how they're doing, I think that's everybody.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think that the ideal is parishioner to parishioner, peer to peer. And so the more that you can get your parishioners engaged in contacting parishioners, the better work you're doing. We are just about to launch a special fundraiser. We were just about to launch a special fundraiser before all of this happened. We still need to raise this money, and soon. Thoughts on way to reference the COVID situation in the opening of the letter, while also being positive about why we are raising this money now and what it will support in the future. Chris, do you want to take that?
Sure. So I think, again, just sort of going back to a similar question we had earlier, just communicate very clearly in any particularly written communication that this is going on. You must acknowledge that, and that everybody's situation absolutely differs. You have to emphasize that these are the particular things that we're doing to address this. And then you have to emphasize that this is what you can do to help. And again, remember, your missions have not changed. And yes, perhaps certain funds might be diverted to your crisis response, but what a perfect time to start talking about that, and that your parishioners can support exactly that type of work that you're doing right now on the front line in your communities.
Absolutely. I think the ways that we show we're engaged with the wider world shows that we need to be a part of a donor's giving selection. So if we're out there and engaged, folks are gonna support that, because they know that we're helping be a part of the solution in the wider world and in that interconnectedness. let's see here. Does CCS have any metrics on how hard hit the wealthy are financially from the virus?
We don't have that in the immediate. We may have some information that we can share from past crises. I can certainly work with my team to look that up. But this is, right now, as we sort of said, we're focused first on the relationships, trying to stay connected and stay in constant communication. And then we'll look at, as the situation evolves, which it is rapidly, how donors, particularly wealthy, and really the full spectrum of donors, are responding to potential financial downfall.
What Jim Treese asks, what are your thoughts on planned giving communication when the topic may be all too timely? So I would say a couple things about that. The first is, yeah, you have to be really sensitive. I think approaching an older donor at this moment has to be done incredibly sensitively. I am not really asking anybody for money at this point. It's more about just staying in relationship, telling people what their dollars are doing at the church. There'll be time for raising money in the future. We'll have that opportunity. And the same kind of goes around for playing gifts. What I'll say around playing gifts is that a lot of planned giving is in retirement income and retirement accounts. A lot of those assets, fixed income and not equity, so actually may be doing okay in this environment comparatively. And so some folks that are kind of fully into retirement, I talked to a parishioner who was upping, she increased her pledge to the church. She's not really felt an economic impact because almost all of her assets are in fixed income and bonds. And so she's kind of buffered a little bit from the stock market fall that we've seen for everybody else. So there are some, again, it depending on how folks are, how they make their money or how they have their money or how they have their money invested. They may not be feeling it as many as others are. Somebody pointed out the restaurant industry in New York City. They're going to really feel it. They're going to be really hard hit. Others may not be as hard hit from a financial perspective. Anybody else want to add to that about plain giving? Okay. I know that I'm hearing of many folks, especially parents, who are feeling overwhelmed by the floods of resource lists about how to help with families, homeschool. Do you have any strategies for communicating without overwhelm?
Yeah, I think this is where, as the church, we have an advantage. Many of our parishes have things like centering prayer practices or meditative sits, whether people were in a chapel, but that can easily transport to a Zoom situation. So I think it's good to encourage people to find that stillness and quiet that can help in overwhelming, anxious times, or book studies about, over and over we see in the Bible, do not worry, don't worry. Don't be afraid. And so I think you can definitely over communicate. I think the wordier the emails are, or the wordier the letters are, the harder it is for people. It's just a lot coming at them. So we've been trying here at St. John's to use a lot of graphics, to use a lot of images and pictures as opposed to lots and lots of words, and to kind of streamline and be really targeted in our communication. So we're not, sending everything to everybody all the time, but we're communicating with parents about things or with our older folks about other things. And so, and it's going to be a challenge. And we're talking too, just about what about all the people who don't have an online presence? We want to make sure we're still communicating with phone calls, maybe increasing our print mail to a certain target list. So I think it's a great point, and I think we all have to be careful about over communicating. and maybe focus on inviting people into some of those centering practices for themselves, to just carve out 15 minutes to just sit and like be okay and quiet with God and be with God. So I think that's something we can direct people to.
Thank you, Kate.
I'd also probably like to just add in there that it's super important to communicate to everyone just the importance of getting out and taking in the fresh air and breathing in the warm or the cool breeze wherever you are, because that can be equally as refreshing to the soul. And people finding God in the outside and getting out of this house and being cooped up. I mean, taking a walk and just looking at the beauty around you. That yes, we have so much to offer you in content from our churches and our organizations and who we are, but get outside, let your mind rest, and just soak it up.
Love it. I love it. Take care. I mean, there's a message to take care of yourself as well. I mean, we're going to be taking care of others, as my dean likes to say. They instruct you to put your oxygen mask on first in the plane. So let's take care of ourselves so that we can take care of others. Very good advice, Caroline. A question from Raina in New Orleans, wondering if anyone is crafting a message to auto draft / direct debit folks just to remind them that they can pause their auto draft if needed.
I would almost say if they, David, go ahead.
Go ahead, Caroline.
I would say if they want to pause their auto draft, I think they should do that on their own. Don't give them the opportunity, because they may be just fine and we don't know it. And then when they do come to you, you have the opportunity to be very pastoral to them, but give them the first out.
Absolutely. That's good. I think we can be, we can kind of be, sometimes come across as insensitive with our sensitivities. And sometimes if we, put that out there, I've also been in the case where, why would you think I wouldn't pay my pledge? Why would you make that assumption that I couldn't make my pledge? So I think we do want to leave it up to our donors to communicate with us, our parishioners to communicate with us. I have had that experience already. I've had one parish family, they got their auto debit went off on the 15th. And that afternoon, I got an email saying, can you please turn this off? And we turned it off that afternoon. And so we, of course, want to be responsive. And even that, again, is one of the things my dean likes to say is good administration is good pastoral care. So if we can respond quickly and let them know we turned it off, followed through with their request, they're going to feel like we're being pastorally responsive to them. And that's helpful as well. Anybody else want to add something to that?
I think that's great. And I think, we sometimes make a mistake, like you were saying, David, of assuming that people who maybe don't have the means or maybe wouldn't pledge or give. And we should never make that assumption. Some of the most generous people we know are the ones who have the least, resources to give, but they give what they can. So we should never make those decisions for people.
Okay, well, we've just got a few more minutes on the phone call. I want to appreciate and acknowledge everybody who's given us great questions and comments over here on the chat today. Thank you so much. I'm confident we did not answer everything, and we want to try to. We will memorialize the chat and try to answer additional questions that we can. There are some documents that we'll send out after this phone call that, like Chris mentioned, their guidance that they're giving from CCS Fundraising. And anything that we've said today, that is more on a list form or something like that, we'll try to memorialize and get out to you. Joe is also recording the session today, so that should be here for archival purposes. Before we leave, if I could just ask each of the panelists, I've not told them I'm going to do this until right now, but if there is one parting piece of advice they could give to listeners today, what would it be?
I'll go first, and that is something that an Episcopal priest said constantly during a campaign we worked with him on, and that is that money follows mission. Lead with your mission. Your mission hasn't changed. People really do want to support you. They're expecting that this support is going to be needed. So money follows mission. Start with your mission first.
Thank you, Chris.
I'm
Caroline?
going to really have some of the wonderful advice that some wonderful committee members of mine have truly instilled in me, and it's really changed the work that we do and changed me as a person. But really lead everything with prayer. I mean, truly and fervently pray hard for guidance and persistence and wisdom, and courage to face the work that we do every day with unbridled courage. And also I had a great point and then I lost it. I'm sorry, guys, but it's prayer. And get back to the heart of what we do. We're generosity. Our mission is God's work in the Bible and in the kingdom, to build the kingdom, and just really dig deep spiritually on why we do what we do, and instill that to our people. Sorry, I just totally blanked for a second.
Okay, Caroline. Thank you. Kate?
That was beautiful. It was perfect, Caroline. I guess I would just say, that we love God's people. Just love God's people, love God, love God's people. That's what we're called to do. That's what we're here to do. And that really speaks to the relationship piece and caring for people first, not necessarily about their dollars, but about them. And everything else will sort itself out, and the church will still be the church, and God is still God. And regardless of our circumstances, just don't lose sight of that and love God's people.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much, Kate. And I would just add that kind of riffing off what Chris said, I think money follows energy as well. So encourage your staff, your clergy, your parish to be energetic, to be engaged, to be in relationship, and money will follow. It will take care of itself with our good work following after that. Stay tuned to SEEP. Joe's trying to put together a lot of good webinars. There's one tomorrow, another one on stewardship. I know there's one scheduled for next week that has more to do with finances. So please stay connected to SEEP and those offerings coming through the pipe. If we need to get together again, we will. We're happy to do that in the next couple weeks. Again, we're taking it 1-2 days at a time, but as we go along, we're happy to kind of stay engaged and be with each other and help each other out through this time. I thank you all for being here today. I really, really do appreciate it. And I wish you the best in everything that you're doing at your parishes, all the great work you're doing. The Lord be with you all.
And also with you.
And also with you.
Thank you.